Hello and welcome to Interreg Europe's Q&A session dedicated to our second call for project proposals. The call is open now and we are dedicating the next 90 minutes to answering your questions about the call. So this is going to be your time to get your questions answered. My name is Mia Itanen. I'm a communication officer at the Interreg Europe Joint Secretariat, and I will lead you through today's session. I will not be doing it alone. I have two colleagues here who will be answering your questions. Nicolas Sanger from our Projects and Platforms Unit, the head of unit. Nico, welcome.
Good morning, Mia. Good morning to all.
And we have Anne Rosto, one of our finance officers, answering to any of the finance questions you might have. Good morning, Anne.
Good morning, Mia. Good morning, everyone.
In addition to the three of us taking your questions and replying to them, we have some colleagues helping us out behind the scenes. There will be some colleagues who will share links in the chat and help us with the tool for a smooth session. Once you're coming in, you are all muted, but you have the chat at your disposal and you're very welcome to use it. In fact, I would be very keen to know where you are joining us from. So post a quick hello in the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from today. We will also be taking your questions through a tool called Slido. Slido is already active and we've received quite a few questions already before the session, but you can keep posting them throughout the session and we will start going through them very soon. Slido is accessible through a link that you'll find in the chat and also in slido.com with the hashtag Interreg Europe. Go and check out the questions that others have already posted. You can also upvote them by liking them, and we'll start with your most popular questions first. But in the next 90 minutes, we'll try to go through as many questions as we can. This is the first Q&A session that we're doing in a series of online Q&A talks that we'll have during the call. And I know that some of you might have more experience from Interreg Europe project. Some of you might be slightly more new to the program. So I would like to get a little bit more info and a sense of how much you might already know about us. We have a little welcome poll and we will launch it now. I would just like to know if you're already familiar with Interreg Europe. So take a moment to give us some input. Let us know if you've already maybe been in one of our projects or if you've applied before, or if this is really the first time you are discovering Interreg Europe. This will shape the discussion that we'll have today, just to give us a little bit of a sense of how much of the basics to cover, just to make sure that we have everyone on the same page as we go into the questions. I see the answers coming in. I'll give you a little bit more time. So far, it looks like about 55%, half of you are rather new to the program, which is great news for us, but it also means that we might then start with some basic information before going to the Q&A. About 30% of you have already some experience. So if you have any additional tips or tricks to share as we start discussing the questions, feel free to pop those in the chat. I think we can close the poll and share the results. As I said, a lot of newcomers here with us today. Welcome. We'll start taking you through what Interreg is and Interreg Europe is and what we can offer you. And we also have some people who have already been in our projects, 35% and 9% who already applied, but did not get into a project yet. And Nico, how do the results look to you? What do you hope from today's Q&A session? Any comments or instant thoughts on the poll results?
I think it's very interesting to have more than half that are newcomers, because one of our aim is also to attract newcomers. And it's also nice that we prepare a presentation in case they were newcomers. So we may go back to quickly to the core principles of Interreg Europe. I think it may be useful for this 56%.
Indeed. As Nico said, we have reserved some time to cover some of the basics, and seeing the results of the poll and knowing that a lot of people might be interested in some basics, and also seeing from the questions, a lot of you are interested in eligibility, how many people should be involved, what kind of topics we cover, how to fine-tune the idea of your project. We will start with a very short overview of what Interreg Europe is and how our second call works. We'll do this with the help of a couple of slides, and I will let Nico and Anne take you through the basics, and then we will go into your questions. Just remind you, Slido is already open. You can put your questions in Slido. We will come back to them and give you some answers. But for now, I will pass the floor to Nico first to explain us a little bit more about Interreg Europe. Nico, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mia. You already see an important information now on the screen, which are the dates of the second call. I think that's the main aim of today. It's to prepare applications for this call. And you see that the duration is a bit more comfortable than in the first call. It's 12 weeks. So to allow you really to prepare good applications. All information is also on our website, and we hope to have a final decision on the call by the end of this year. But as Mia said, we thought it could be useful, at least for the first Q&A session that we are organizing. It may be useful, especially if you were not in our annual event last week. It would be nice perhaps to come back to a few core principles. Don't worry, we won't be too long, because at the end of the day, that's not the aim of this session. And I apologize in advance for the 30% that knows us well already. You may know by heart what we're going to say now. But I'm mainly addressing now to the newcomers to this session. It may be useful first to understand where Interreg Europe stands in the overall cohesion policy. You may not know, or you may already know, that the cohesion policy is based on two main goals, two main pillars. One is called Investment for Jobs and Growth Goal programs, and that's all the amount of funds that go directly to the member states and to the regions. And any regions in Europe is eligible to this kind of program, but this has nothing, I would say, interregional or international. These funds are managed within each country. But the big bulk of the money of the cohesion policy go through this investment for growth and jobs. And you may hear again later about these programs, because it's important also for Interreg Europe. And then we belong to what is called the European Territorial Cooperation Goal. It's well known as Interreg goal. And you see that already there, it's quite rich, because you have between 80 and 90 programs under that goal too. And we belong to what is called the Strand C, Interregional Cooperation, which group 4 pan-European program. The reason why I'm saying this is that I saw, for instance, a question of the Strand D, or I know that some of you are more familiar with cross-border programs. You have to know that each of these strands has its own objective. And it's not because you know well the cross-border, or you are very familiar with the cross-border, that necessarily it makes you relevant for the interregional. But let's go on what makes us a bit unique. So we have an amount of funds for the whole programming period of almost 380 million. We are the only program in a way that cover all member states plus Norway and Switzerland, which are associated countries. And we have also make the program even more simple for 21-27. We have only one single priority on capacity building. What it means for you is that this capacity building can apply almost to any topic of regional development and of the cohesion policy. So it makes the program quite attractive now, because we can cover a high diversity of topics. But more importantly, I'd like to come to the rationale of this program. You see here the official wording of the regulation. We are there to improve regional development policies. It sounds very ambitious, and maybe sometimes it sounds even abstract, but it's very easy to understand, especially if you're public authorities. In a way, it helps policymakers, it helps regional development policymakers to find new solutions to their challenge by exchanging their experience with other regions, other public authorities in Europe that face similar challenges. So it's everything related to the identification, transfer of good practices, and simply not reinventing the wheel. Maybe you have been working for 20 years on entrepreneurship. The business creation rate in your region is still low. You would like to find a new solution to renew your public intervention in that domain by exchanging with other regions that face similar issues. The reason why we insist on this rationale, it's because it has two main consequences. Petra, if you don't mind staying on the previous. The first thing, compared to other forms of cooperation, in particular cross-border or transnational, is that we primarily focus on policymakers, on what we call in our jargon policy responsible authorities. If you want to be serious with the improvement of policies, you really need to have the public authority, the organization in charge of these policies on board. And the second element is that we are also not an investment program. We are not a research program. We are a capacity building program. So the core focus of our program is on exchange of experiences. It's quite important to keep in mind. And this makes us, of course, very different from, in particular, cross-border and transnational cooperation. The way we want to achieve this objective is through two main actions. Of course, the projects, we will focus mainly on this today because it's relevant for the call. And from that point of view, we are not at all unique. All Interreg programs are supporting projects, but we have also a unique initiative, which is called the Policy Learning Platform, that allows any region interested in our subjects to also benefit from the program without having the need necessarily to be involved in projects. If you go a bit deeper in the project, I'd like to say a few words on the project. What is important for you to know is that this very ambitious objective that you see at the program level is reflected also at the level of each project. So in a way, the program will predefine for you your objective. If you're interested in a project, you will not need to be creative. It means that you will come to improve the policy of the regions involved in your projects. And these policies can be very various. It can be at the local, regional, even national level when justified. So we are very open with this notion of policy instrument and regional development policies. However, in your project, you will need to make sure that at least one region focus on what I mentioned at the beginning, the other goal of the cohesion policy, the investment for jobs and growth program. It's quite important because the regulations say that Interreg Europe is also there to help managing authority to better implement their ERDF, their ESF program in the regions. So we are there also to help these managing authorities to find new inspiration from other regions. So you see, this is quite important to keep in mind. If we go now to the activities, I want to insist on the fact that the capacity building positioning of this program is also reflected in the project activities, because what you're going to propose will be mainly related to learning from exchanging. And you see on the slide the very typical activities we have in our projects, workshops, seminars, etc. Everything that is related to identifying, analyzing, and hopefully transferring good practices. Under certain circumstances, it's not enough to simply visit the people, meet the people, analyze the practices. Sometimes you really need to test in your regions something in order to see if it works and to learn more intensively, I would say, on this. And that's the reason why we have also, under certain conditions, the possibility to have pilot actions. And there's a new feature in this program is that you can even propose pilot action from the very beginning of the project. If you're able to define them during the preparation phase, it's possible. But you will have also another opportunity at midterm to propose this pilot action. All this is really related to increase the capacity of the people and organization involved in the projects. Another unique feature of Interreg Europe is that the projects are organized in two phases, which last overall in 4 years. We have, of course, the core phases of 3 years, which is dedicated to this capacity building, this exchange of experience activities. And this is the most important phase because it is the reason why Interreg Europe exists. The idea is that at the end of the this core phase, hopefully the regions will have find new inspiration and will have improve something in their region, will have improved a policy in their region. If it's not the case, this may happen for different reasons, then the region would have to produce a light action plan. And the unique feature in our program is that we keep on working with the project during 1 year, either to see the concrete benefits of the policy improvement on the territory, whether it's related to CO2 emissions saved, to new jobs created, to better integration of certain population in the labor market. It can be very various. Or we also monitor for the regions that were not successful in the first phase, we monitor whether the action plan is implemented in the last year of the project in the follow-up phase. This is mainly, really in a nutshell, what I can do. I hope I was not too quick, but I'm sure we'll come back on certain of these notions later on.
Thank you, Nico. We certainly will come back to some of these points. I just want to remind everyone at this point that Slido is open and you can submit your questions at any time during this session. We already have about 30 questions lined up, so thank you for being so very active. We will come back to those in a bit. So for now, as Nico explained, Interreg Europe is a very special program among the Interregs, very unique as well, covering 29 countries, all of Europe more or less, 2 different actions, projects, and the policy learning platform. You heard a little bit about the key features of projects and how it works. We have a lot of questions about who is eligible, who can participate, and what kind of partners should be involved in the projects. Let's anticipate some of the questions that are coming and continue with Anne, who will tell us a little bit more about the program and the eligibility. Anne, over to you.
Thank you, Mia. Yes, so who can be eligible to our project? As Nico explained, we are a program about we want you to improve the policy instrument in your region. So we mainly target public authorities, public law bodies, public organizations who are involved in the management of the policy instrument. It can be local authorities, it can be regions. This is our main target. But our program is also available for private organizations, only for non-profit bodies. Non-profit bodies are eligible to our program. They cannot be lead partner, but they can be involved as partners in our program. Now, going into the partnership, there is a new feature that we introduced in this new programming period. So for the second call, it's important that the policy responsible authority is involved in the project, because they are the policy authority that is responsible for the policy instrument, and they have to be involved in the exchange of experience. So we want them to be clearly involved in the partnership. So the criteria here on eligibility is that half of the policy instruments that are addressed in the project, for half of this policy instrument, the partners should be the policy responsible authorities. So the policy responsible authority has to be involved as partner. And for the other half, the policy responsible authority has to be involved as associated policy authority. This is a different status in the project, that is not as partner. As partner, you can have a budget, you can request ERDF. As associated policy authority, you participate in the project, but you do not request any budget. So this means you are involved in the exchange of experience, you are present, and that's what we want to see. We want to see the policy responsible authorities involved as much as possible in the project. Now, going into the finances, you probably want to know how much ERDF you can get from the project you will submit. So if you are, this depends on the status of your organization. So if you are a public organization or a body governed by public law, you will get 80% of ERDF, and you will bring 20% of co-financing as partner. If you are a private organization, always non-profit organization, you will get 70% of ERDF. If you are a Norwegian partner, if you come from Norway, then there is Norwegian funding because you don't get ERDF, but we manage the Norwegian funding. So you will get 50% of Norwegian funding, and you will bring 50% of your own partner contribution, either public or private. Now, when it comes to Swiss partners, you are also eligible to the program. However, we do not manage directly the Swiss funding, so we recommend that you get in touch with your national point of contact so that you can see how you can get the Swiss funding directly, and they will explain you how it works exactly. And to go a bit more into details, what costs are eligible. So I will not give a full presentation on that, but you have information also on our website on more details and in our program manual, but just a general overview for now. Here here the list of cost categories that are eligible to our program that you can plan in your budget. Our message here is really, you can see we opt for simplification. Really, we make as much as possible some simplification for you. As you can see, for the staff cost, for example, you have one method of calculation that is a fixed percentage all over the project, that is applied for staff cost calculation. For the office and administration and the travel and accommodation, there is a flat rate. You can use a 15% of the staff costs, and it's a flat rate. You don't need any justification. Just for travel and accommodation, it's still possible to report on real costs if really it is needed for you. You need very specific cases. And the other cost categories, external expertise and services, the cost categories you need to be to pay attention when you plan it, because this is the external costs that you will need to contract outside of your organization with public procurement rules. And equipment is usually very limited in our project because we are not a project about concrete implementation of activity. We are about exchange of experience, so equipment should be limited. And infrastructure and works is also only for pilot action. As Nico explained, pilot action is when you test one idea that comes from another project, another partner. So it's very limited. That's the cost categories that are possible. So now let's go into the questions.
Let's go into the questions. Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Nico, for taking us through some of the basics. I hope everyone picked up at least a few key principles from those slides. But as said, we have a lot of questions, and we are going to start going through them in the order of popularity. So if you go to Slido, you will see the list of all of the questions that participants have submitted, the ones that you've submitted, perhaps. You can upvote them and move them up the list by giving them a thumbs up in Slido. Let's take a few of the questions now, and then let's continue to talk a little bit more about the second call specifically and maybe what we are looking for in terms of the project. But we did get a lot of questions about partnerships, eligibility, and so on. So let's stop here for a little while and take the first question on the list, which would be about, all right, order just moved. So we'll start with Livia's question at first. Livia is asking about the objectives and action, and this touches upon what Nico mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. Livia is asking about the two strategic actions of the program, the interregional cooperation projects and the policy learning platform. Should these two be part of every project, or are they alternatives? Nico, I know you explained this already to some extent, but can you maybe just quickly recap what the projects and the platform are all about?
Yes, of course, no problem. So I would clarify that these are two complete separate operations. These are the two pillars of the program. So today, what we're going to discuss in the perspective of the second call, it's what the project should do. So if you are a project, it's completely different from the policy learning platform, which is another strategic initiative of the program. But you don't need to do anything in relation to the policy learning platform. The only thing is that when you are an approved project, we will ask you to contribute to the activities of the policy learning platform by participating in certain events, by submitting good practices, for instance. But I insist, it's two complete separate operations.
Indeed, and today's focus is on projects and the second call. Let's go a little bit more into how the projects are built up. We have a question about the target policies. Should the applicants think about one policy per project for the full application, or is it one policy per participating region? Nico, maybe you can continue on this.
Yes, of course. This is an important question because the logic is one policy per participating region. Each territory that is represented in the project has to identify a main policy instrument, we call it, a main, regional development policy that it will try to improve. So you cannot have one single policy instrument at the level of the project.
Very clear, very straightforward. Staying a little bit on the objectives of the project, what about a project that or an applicant who might be struggling to choose the objective? Is it possible to go for two, let's say greener Europe, Europe closer to citizens, or maybe two specific objectives within one broader topic like climate change and biodiversity? Or is it necessary to pin down a specific choice?
Yes, it's a question that we regularly have this, and the advice of the program. So first, technically, when you will complete the application form, it's not possible to select more than one specific objective. And beyond this technical constraint, the answer is that we would advise you to be as specific, as focused as possible. So it doesn't mean that certain subjects, they do not touch to several objective. I give you an example. If you have a project that supports social economy, you may have still an economic development angle because you want to make these SMEs profitable and sustainable. So you would still apply to smarter region. But of course, because you are focusing on social economy, this would have also an impact on the other policy objective dedicated to a more social Europe. And these kind of things are, of course, of added value because you are also addressing several elements with the same topic. But the message is to be as focused as possible and to concentrate on what is exactly the overall core objective of the project. In which area I want improvement? Is it more in the competitiveness of this sector, or is it more to tackle social issues that I have in my regions? And this should help you to decide in which specific objective you apply. The last thing I wanted to say, maybe Mia, because that's a very important criteria. At the end of the day, you will need to identify the policy instruments in each of your regions that you would like to improve. And very often this determines in which specific objective you apply, because it is reflected in each of the policy instruments that you have selected in the different regions.
Yes, exactly. So it also is about choices and knowing what instruments and what specific aspects you want to work on. And I would say it also makes your project application stronger by being clear on what you want to address instead of trying to keep it too broad. Thank you for that. I'm sure we will come back to the project activities and policy instrument choices with the other questions. But now let's talk about the partners for a little while. There's a question from Helena about the difference between advisory partner and lead partner. Are both needed, and is it necessary to have such both in a project? Anne, I will maybe bring you in here to address this question.
Yeah, this is interesting because it's an opportunity to clarify that the difference between lead partner is indeed the one that is in charge of the whole project, the whole partnership. This is the one that is liable to the JS, to our program, for the whole project. The advisory partner is a role that is different. It's a partner that will not address a policy instrument, but will be supporting the exchange of experience, will provide an additional support, an additional expertise, thematic expertise, for instance, to the partners. So this role is very specific, and it's not compulsory at all. It's really only if it is needed in the partnership. And actually, this added value of having an advisory partner has to be clearly demonstrated in the application form. You need to explain clearly why this advisory partner is needed, what it will bring to the partnership. I don't know if Nico wants to add anything about this point on the advisory partner. Okay, so.
No further remarks from Nico at this point. We'll come back to Nico shortly, but Anne, I will let you continue with the next question as well. You already touched upon the let's say, slightly special status of the Norwegian and Swiss partners, but let's go back to the participation of partners from Switzerland. Just a quick recap on how it works for the Swiss partners.
Yes, well, Swiss partners from Switzerland are eligible to the project, so they can apply and be part of a consortium. They cannot be lead partners. This, as I said before, and especially as a private non-profit body, anyway, they cannot be lead partner from any other countries. So now, a partner from Switzerland, we would recommend that you contact with your national contact point to have more information on how you can participate and how you can get some Swiss funding, because you can get some, and it is possible for you to get it so that you are involved in a partnership. So we really invite you to get in touch with your national contact point. You can get the contact information on our website in section In My Country, and to contact with any consortium that would be interesting to have some Swiss partner involved in the project, because we think it's a very good idea that you can take part in a project as well.
All right, great, thank you. I'm going to come back to the question about the number of partners a little bit later, because we have actually an illustrative slide on this, and I want to share that with all of you. Let's take the second question on the list. This one is an anonymous question about eligibility. Is a project eligible for Interreg Europe funding if it addresses a policy instrument, improvement of legislative framework, or its implementation, and something that is not, if it's not directly linked with the interventions of the regional operational program for investment for growth and jobs? Nico, perhaps you can comment on this.
Yes, I will try to answer as clearly as possible. First, the focus on a legislative framework is possible because the notion, again, of policy instrument is quite broad in our program. You can find it in the manual. And sometimes a law or a decree can be considered as a policy instrument if it has an impact, of course, of what happens in the region. And this specific policy instrument do not necessarily need to be related to the regional operational program, but it depends what is meant here by directly related. What I say at the beginning in my presentation is that let's imagine you have 7 regions wanted to work together on low carbon economy. Within these 7 regions, at least one has to focus on the improvement of their operational program, structural funds, investment for growth and jobs program. So the subject of low carbon economy need, of course, to be covered in this instrument, but it also needs to be reflected in all the other policy instruments proposed in this project. From that point of view, the topic is linked in all the policy instruments. You understand that what makes the program coherent. But the other regions, they do not at all have the obligation that their policy instrument is related in a way or another to the investment for jobs and growth program in their region. I hope this is clear.
I think it is clear. If it's not clear, please don't hesitate to post another question and ask for further clarifications. Let's take 2 more questions in a bit of a joint round and then continue with some more specifics about the second call. Let's take the third question on the list. To fulfill the requirement of having an instrument linked to an instrument in a jobs and growth program, should the managing authority be a partner, or is it sufficient to have them as a stakeholder in the project? And this is slightly linked to the third question on the list. Is it mandatory that the policy authority responsible for the policy instrument participates in the project, or is it enough just to have a support letter? So Nico or Anne, if you want to comment as well, please, let's clarify this. What is the role of the policy responsible authority in a project?
If Anne allows, I may start with this, but Anne already explained the importance of having the policy responsible authorities on board by explaining the new rules. So you understand that Interreg Europe is really about policies and improving regional development policies. And the experience we got in the last 20 years is that it makes a huge difference to have the policy responsible authority on board in the cooperation. You have much higher chance of improving the policies at the end. The conclusion of all this is that we have new requirements in this programming period. And as Anne explained, ideally, we would like that in all regions, for all policy instruments, the policy responsible authority, so the managing authority, if you are addressing the operational program, is directly involved as a partner. That would be the perfect situation. It's not, unfortunately, it's not always possible for different reasons. Public authorities or managing authorities, they cannot always be involved in Interreg Europe projects. So if this happens, they have to be involved, but it's a bit more than a stakeholder. We call them associated policy authorities, as Anne mentioned. So it's a kind of golden stakeholder, let's say, in our program, and they need to sign a declaration. Also, they appear in the application form. They would need to sign a declaration, but they would not be financially involved. So that's what we used to have letter of support in a previous program. Now we call them declaration. The most important thing for you to remember, that's what Anne explained as a requirement, is that at least for half of the policy instruments, the policy responsible authorities have to be involved as partners. It's an obligation. Otherwise, the project will not be eligible.
Good. I'm glad we clarified that. Let's take a few more slides on the specifics of the second call, and then we'll come back to the questions. There were some questions about the content of the project, about how many partners from which countries, and what kind of activities we're looking for in the project, what makes a project innovative or unique. So let's continue with these just a little bit and then continue with the questions. Again, in the meantime, if you have more questions, you can already submit those in Slido, and we will come back to these in just a little while. But Nico, I will let you tell us a little bit more about the topics that we cover in the second call.
Thank you, Mia. I will be very quick because I was mentioning this single priority on capacity building, which can apply potentially to any kind of regional development issue, and you see it reflected there. It's a good news, I think, for the participants in the call, is that most, or if not all, the topics relevant for regional development are possible again in this second call, and you will see them reflected in these six icons: smarter Europe, greener Europe, more connected, more social, closer to citizen. And we even have something called governance, which relates to subjects that are not necessarily thematic. It's more related to the management of the policy instrument. For instance, how do you manage state aids? How do you manage procurement when you are public authorities, regardless of the subject? Even these kind of topics are possible in our program. So it has become very open. I can say a quick word also on the innovative character. We are not extremely demanding with the innovative character, to be honest. I saw one question which was about, shall I refer to Adriatic project or to Central Europe projects that have been financed in transnational, other transnational programs? You can refer to them, but we have certain rules in our program that impose that you go beyond anyway this project. But it's always nice to know where you come from and how you are a bit different from the initiative you come from. But what we want to say with the innovative character is just that we have financed 258 projects under the 2014-2020 period. It's quite nice. It's quite important for you to have a look even briefly at these projects. We have them mentioned, their topic is mentioned in the terms of reference of the call, to see if your topic has already been tackled, which is perhaps possible, and then to make sure you go a bit beyond what has always been done, at least in terms of partnership. To make it simple, if a project from the previous programming period come back with more or less the same topic, more or less the same partnership, it will not go through, because then the innovative character will not be demonstrated. So that's what we want to highlight with the innovative character. But Europe is wide. We can finance several projects on the same subject. That's not at all an issue, as long as we do not finance over and over again the same partnerships. And one very important element that also will cover several of your questions, you understand that we are the only pan-European Interreg program. And one of the added value of Interreg Europe is that you go beyond your usual cooperation area. You don't stay in your cross-border area. You don't stay in your transnational area. So we really would like to encourage pan-European broad coverage partnership. Unfortunately, despite this encouragement and this high recommendation in the past, still we were receiving a lot of applications where the partnership was in essence rather transnational. 80% of the partners or 80% of the budget was still going to the same area, the Med area, for instance, or the Central Europe area or the Baltic Sea area. So to try to force a bit the beneficiaries and the applicants to have this pan-European coverage, we have divided Europe in 4 arbitrary areas: the north, east, south, and west. You see them represented there. And what is important is that in your partnership, you need to have at least one partner from each of this area to be eligible under the call. So that may already answer to several questions we received in the chat or in the Slido, because it means that the minimum number of partners to be eligible is at least 4 countries that needs to be represented. So 4 partners, of course.
Thank you, Nico. This brings us to the end of the slides. And I said earlier that we had 30 questions lined up and we started covering them. More questions are coming through as we move along, and we still have about 30 questions to cover. So let's dedicate the rest of this session to going through your questions. Again, just a reminder, if you see a question that is similar to what you would like to know or something that you are also interested in Slido, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and upvote it, because we will prioritize the questions based on their popularity. Nico just mentioned that at least 4 areas to be covered, partners from 4 different parts of Europe needed, but just to repeat, there are some questions about the numbers per country, how many partners, what type of partners. Nico, can you just continue again, taking the first question on the list? How many countries and what kind of countries? Maybe give an example. You mentioned that we need to cover all the different parts, and avoid something that would be too concentrated in a specific geographical area. But anything else you would like to add on this regard?
If you would allow me, Mia, I may try to tackle the 3 Marco and Ariana's question together, because they all relate to the same in a way. But as I've just said, you saw these 4 areas that has been created. To be eligible, there's an exception for outermost regions, by the way, but I don't think we will mention it today. It's a very specific case. But for the more traditional kind of partners, you would need to have one partner at least in the north area. So let's say in Estonia, one partner in the east, let's say Romania, one partner from the south, let's say in Cyprus, and one partner from the west, France maybe, or Netherlands. As soon as you have one partner, one region from each of this area, then you're fine. You will pass the eligibility criteria. Then I see more question on how many partners per country, how many regions per country. In most of the cases, usually a country is represented only by one territory, one region, whether it's a city, whether it's a regional council, sometimes it's even a ministry, national level. So, and this region usually is represented by one partner. That's the most common configuration. But I don't know, let's take an example. If you are working on energy issues, you are a regional council interested in improving this policy, you may like to come with your regional agency in charge of energy, because it is a specialized body in that domain. And as a public authority, you need to have them on board for addressing the low carbon strategy of your regions. So in this country, this will be the regional policy for low carbon economy that will be addressed, and 2 partners will come, the regional council together with the regional agency. That's also very welcome, this kind of configuration in Interreg Europe. But what you need to be careful about, we had in the first call several projects where a country was represented by more than 1 regions. We even sometimes had 3 different regions from the same country. This very, very quickly lead to unbalanced partnership arrangements. Even in terms of funding, it means that sometimes 30 or 40% of the funding go to one single country. This is not at all encouraged. You need to be very careful with the overall balanced partnership. So in other words, if the same country is represented by more than 1 region, you will need to justify it. Why do you need 2 different regions or 2 different territories from the same country? And you will need to try to keep it financially balanced, so not too much budget goes to the same country. I hope it answers most of these questions.
Yes, I think it covers Marco's question as well, the one that we have as next on the list. So keep it balanced, make sure you cover the 4 areas and justify your choices. All right, let's go then from partners back to policy instruments. We talked about this already quite a bit, but just a quick comment, Nicole, let you continue. Can there be more than one policy instrument per region?
Yes, that's a very important question, this one, because we had to simplify the approach in Interreg Europe. But this question is important. Why? When you address low carbon economy, or when you address SME competitiveness or social inclusion, there are more than one policy in your region that address this. It's obvious. Even at the regional, there may be 2 or 3. There's the operational program, your own policy. However, if you come to Interreg Europe, you will need to select one main policy instrument you want to address. So the answer to this question is no. Per region, you need to have one main policy instrument that you would like to focus on.
Thank you. Very clear answer there. Let's go a bit more into specifics, let's say. Pilot actions, bit of a special part of the project. Maybe elaborate a little bit on that. Nico, again, I will let you continue. What type of pilot actions can be funded? And if you want to add more on the funding, feel free.
Yes, we could spend a lot of time on this. What I propose, I may put a link in the chat for people to have a look. We organized a webinar at the end of last year, in 2022, so you could have more concrete examples. But the overall principle is what? The pilot actions in Interreg Europe will anyway be quite limited financially. You have an average budget proposed for pilots, and it will not exceed 120,000 euro maximum. So you see that it's a limited scale. Why? Because the pilot actions is about testing. The testing element is very important. It's not there to implement something, generalize something in the region. It's really to try if it works or not. And what does that mean? That it means also that at the end of the pilot action, there should be an effort to see whether or not you can generalize it, keep it in your region because it has been successful, or if it has not been successful, okay, you don't continue it. But this testing element is very important. And the last element I would highlight, or the 2 last elements, is an interregional character. So it has to be joint, meaning that at least one, it cannot be one region working isolated from the others trying to do something. At least 2 regions need to be involved in a pilot action, because we call them joint pilot action, even if the participation of this other region is quite light. For instance, it may be the good practice owner that helps another region to test this practice in the other region, and then the donor region has just a coaching role, I would say, in the implementation. But already for us, this will be considered as joint. And last but not least, but I hope it's clear now with everything that we say, pilot actions has to be clearly in the framework of a policy instrument. It's there to contribute to improve a policy instrument. Ideally, if it works, the policy instrument should take over the implementation of the generalization of the pilot action. In a nutshell, this is what I can say about the pilot actions.
And anything to add from your side? What are you looking for when you see pilot actions in the project application in terms of funding?
Yeah, well, as Nico said, there is a general average that is mentioned in the program manual that is just an indication. It's not a limit, but it's 120,000 euros. This is just a general indication, because what we really look is that the costs that are planned for the pilot action are really in line with the activities that are planned. You can plan also much less for a pilot action. It depends on what you want to test from the partner good practice that you are bringing to your region. What I can see in terms of cost categories is also that for pilot action, you can plan equipment cost, and you can also plan infrastructure and works if you need. This is the only activity for which you can actually use these cost categories, because they are the only activity that can be implementation oriented. To be clear, in your project, you are we are financing the exchange of experience. It's only with pilot action, if you decide to test something that comes from another partner that you can spend some budget on concrete activities, on testing the activity, implementing the activity in your project, in your region, sorry. So this kind of cost like equipment and infrastructure is only for pilot action. So that's what I want to say, that you cannot use this cost category, infrastructure or other equipment that is not office equipment. Usually you don't use it for the exchange of experience.
Okay, good. Let's see if we get more questions about pilot actions later on. But now staying on the topic of budgets, Anne, maybe you can give an example of or our overview of the expected size of the project in terms of budget in euros. What is a typical project budget for Interreg Europe projects?
Yeah, I understand that you want to have an idea and an estimation of the total budget of a project. This is not so easy to give because, well, the same as I explained just now about pilot action, when we look at a project, a budget, we really look that the costs are matched with the activities that are planned. So depending on if you have 5 partners or 12 partners, it depends on the intensity of your work plan, how many meetings you have in each semester. It depends on where are your partners from, if they are from outermost region or from more closer regions to travel. So it or the number of events that you will organize, it really depends on what you will do. So really, we look at when you will receive the application forms, we look at the costs with the work plan, with the content of your project. So in the program manual, we give an overall estimation of the budget of a project that is between 1 and 2 million ERDF for euro for your project. This is an estimation. It has to be justified. And obviously, if you go to 2 million euros, but you have a limited partnership and not a very intense workshop, we will question it. So what we recommend is that you work on your work plan, on your activities, and then you estimate the cost, and it will match. It should match together.
Good. The next few questions that are coming up on the list are linked to topics that we have already tackled and addressed. So just a very quick recap. Nico, maybe a short comment from you, and if you want to add anything. Let's go to the first one. Can an institution that is not directly related to ERDF policies, such as, for example, a scientific institute, be a lead partner? Yes, no. Nico?
Yes. You may want me to develop. Yes. This notion of having an investment for growth and jobs programs in the partnership does not mean that it has to be at the lead partner level. The question I would more ask for academic institution, universities, is exactly what is their role in the project, because although they are completely eligible, of course, most, I think in Europe, all of them are public authorities, we question more the policy relevance of this kind of organization. So usually they come with their public authorities when they address a policy instrument, then that's fine. If they come alone, maybe they are an advisory partner. This can happen, and we can have advisory lead partner, by the way. But really the question for research institutes, universities, is what is exactly my role in this project, Interreg Europe project, where the idea is to improve regional development policies. And don't understand me wrong, universities have a strong role to play in policy design, but at the end of the day, they are not the one, usually they are not the one responsible for the policy.
Good. And just another quick clarification. So just to double check, at least 50% of partners should be policy authorities directly responsible for the instruments. Yes or no, Nico?
The devil is in the details, every word is important. The exact wording is not this one, because you may have more partners. As I say, there can be several partners in the same region addressing them. The real rule is for 50% of the policy instrument addressed in a project, the policy responsible authority has to be involved. And in total, it may mean that it's a bit less than 50% of the partners. If each region comes with 2-3 partners, but you have to reason in terms of policy instruments. I hope it clarifies the question.
Yes, thank you for that. And also, just to repeat, this is all specified in our program manual, something
Yes.
that we strongly encourage you to check. We also have a very useful and practical online self-assessment tool that will clarify some of these key criteria and basic requirements, so you can quickly click through that and see if you are on the right track to develop your project. Before we go to Livia's question, I want to stay on the lead partner eligibility aspect a little bit longer, and we'll take the second question on the list. If somebody would like to lead a project, just to clarify, we've talked about lead partners, advisory partners, project partners. The formal role of the lead partner, if somebody signs up to be a lead partner, what are they actually signing up for? Is it just financing, co-designing, or what kind of tasks does the lead partner have to take on board? Nico and I don't know which one of you wants to start. Maybe Anne, you can start, and then Nico, if you want to add, we can build on it.
Yes. Yes, I get that. So the lead partner is the partner who is in charge of the project. This is the partner who is managing the project and who is liable to the joint secretariat, to us, for the project. So he has a huge responsibility. This partner is managing the consortium with the other partners, is coordinating with them the implementation, the monitoring of the activities, the monitoring of the budget, and he is responsible to us for the implementation of the budget also. So the lead partner is the one signing the subsidy contract with us. This is the legal responsibility towards us. You will find more information about the role of the lead partner with more detail in the program manual that we invite you to refer. It's section 3.4.3, role of the lead partner, and you have a list of each responsibility of the lead partner that are detailed and that are explained here, and who can be lead partners. So really, it's really the one that embraces the whole responsibility for the project. So it's important. It's someone who has the capacity for it and who has the capacity for coordination and for the financial responsibility also is to the lead partner. However, the lead partner signs also a partnership agreement with the partners that are liable to him for financial implementation as well. So you will find all this clearly explained in the program manual. So we invite you to refer to it if it's clear.
Thank you, Anne. Nico, anything to add on lead partners? No. All right, then we move on. Let's stay on the eligibility and different institutions for a little while longer, and I'm going to group a few of the questions. We have a question, the third one on the list. Can a school of informal education, such as art school, apply for an Interreg Europe project? And the last question on the list is a little bit linked, again, coming back to the balance. We talked about how the partnership needs to be balanced, focused on policy, but how about research institutes, universities? How do you choose your partners? Nico, maybe I'll let you build on this again, and then we can come back to Anne for any additional remarks.
Yes, thank you, Mia. For the School of Informal Education, Art School, there's two answers to it. The first one is from the pure legal status point of view, what Anne has explained in our first slide on who is eligible. It would first be to check whether this school can be considered as either a public authority or a body governed by public law, equivalent body, let's say, public equivalent body, or a private non-profit organization. In case this can be confirmed, this organization would be eligible to funding in Interreg Europe. But again, the most important question to us would be, what would be the role of this school? What would be its relevance, its overall relevance in a program dedicated to the improvement of regional development policies? I don't say it's impossible, but it would be unlikely that this school is responsible for a certain policy. So maybe this school should come with the public authorities to address a specific policy instrument. And that's where really that the questions will be for the program much more than the eligible status. The last thing I can say on the eligible status is that if you want to check whether or not you are an eligible body to Interreg Europe, you would need to contact your partner states, because only the national point of contact are able to check the national regulations, and only them can confirm whether or not you are eligible to Interreg Europe. For the balanced partnership, we will come back again. The balanced partnership is mainly taken from a geographical point of view, to see the number of countries, the pan-European, how much it covers an existing transnational area. So balanced partnership, you can check the program manual. I think it's in section 3. You will see a lot of information. This is one thing. The other thing is research institutes, universities. I will repeat myself. I'm sorry. They are eligible. Usually, they are considered as either public bodies or a public equivalent body. But again, what is your role in the projects? As I think implied in the question, it's true that sometimes these universities or research institutes can come as an advisory partner. We sometimes have quite specialized topic in our project. For instance, we had one in the first call on artificial intelligence in public policies, the use of artificial intelligence. You may need to bring a kind of specialized body in this domain to help the exchange of experience. So of course, this body can become an advisory partner. But in most cases, the university has to come with the public authorities when it addresses the policy instrument, when it's not an advisory partner, because as such, we have very, very few examples where a university is considered as policy responsible authority.
Thank you. Seeing that we have now been going through questions and some basic information for about an hour, before we continue, I just want to remind you that we've scheduled this session for 90 minutes, so we have half an hour to go. We will keep going through your questions, trying to cover as many of them as possible. If you cannot stay with us until the very end of this session, we are being recorded. You will have access to the full recording afterwards, and you can always come back to any of the other answers that you might want to still check out afterwards. Everything will be available on our website a few days after this Q&A. We also have other Q&A sessions coming up later, and you're always free to attend those as well if you still have more questions. But for now, let's keep working through the questions that we have on the list. Before we go into the content, just one, let's say, practical question. The second one on the list. If somebody is already a leading institution, let's say a lead partner in one proposal, is it still possible to be a partner in other proposals in the same call or in the same topic? Is there a limit to the number of proposals that one partner can participate in? Nico.
Yes, thank you, Mia. Another important question, a bit related to innovative characters, etc. There's no limit. Let's be honest. There's no limit. We have tried in the past to discuss with our partner states if it's possible to limit the number of involvement per call of an institution, but it was impossible to find an agreement. And it's true that you cannot expect the same from a very small, institute in a region compared to a big regions where they can be involved in more projects. What is very important for you to understand is that we do not recommend that you go into many applications. There is again a specific explanation in the manual on this. Please select the most interesting or the most relevant project for you. And we are a bit demanding because we are doing analysis of our application, and we immediately identify the organization that are in more than 1, 2, 3 applications. And this can play in the evaluation of the project. So you need to be careful with this multiplication of involvement.
Indeed, think about your resources and what you are capable and what is feasible to do. It's always more about quality rather than quantity as well. Now, let's go into the topic and the content questions, starting with Livia's question first on the list. Coming back to jobs and growth programs that we've talked about quite a bit. If somebody's working on biodiversity conservation, for example, can we maybe give an example on how a policy and instrument on this topic can be an investment on jobs and growth? Nico.
I think this is a very important question because it touched to a confusion we often see with these famous investment for growth and jobs programs. already maybe, perhaps it's not the case for this specific question, there may be a confusion because although they are called investment for growth and jobs, these programs are tackling a lot of different kinds of issues related to regional development, including environmental questions, Greener Europe. For your information, this program even have an obligation to focus on greener subjects through the regulation. The RDF regulation imposes a concentration principle. So in all these programs, you will find different priorities that are related to smarter Europe, to greener Europe. And you will find under greener Europe a lot of regions that have chosen to focus on biodiversity conservation. The best for me, maybe I will publish in the chat an example of one of our past projects called BioGov. If you look at these things that I've just published, you go to the third policy instrument, you will see the operational program of Galicia, and you will see that in Galicia, they have a specific measure on biodiversity. So don't worry, these programs in Europe, even more now in the 21-27, they have an obligation to focus on environmental questions. So it's not because they are called investment, jobs and growth that they do not cover environmental issues.
Thank you. Very good. Moving on to the next one, we keep asking applicants to be specific and think about what instruments to choose and so on. But when it comes to choosing the types of actions, would it be more effective to propose an action that is addressed to a municipality or to a specific region, or perhaps something that is rather at the national level, targeting perhaps multiple municipalities or so?
It's a complicated question because maybe the starting point is not the best one. The starting point is what I would like to improve in my territory. What is a territory, and what is it the fact that there's not enough business startup? Is it the fact that there's too much CO2 emission and my public transport does not work well? Is it the fact that social inclusion is not working well? I've got a poverty level, or education is not performing. You need to start from a need in a region that is addressed through public intervention. And only with this starting point, you will know if it's at the municipal level, it's really the municipalities that face this issue, or it's the region that have this issue, and you would determine the policy instrument in relation to this level, to this territory, either the municipality or a region. But we cannot have, I think, something of a national level with focus on 2-4 targeted municipalities. I don't know how this would be possible, to be honest, this configuration in Interreg Europe. The policy instrument, the territory, the need, the situation that you need to improve is a starting point of an Interreg Europe project.
I think that's very clear. Thank you, Nico, for that. Going back to the composition of partnerships, it's a rather specific question from Patricia, but perhaps you can comment on it at the general level. There is already a kind of a partnership forming with 3 non-profit partners who are from food innovation hubs. So these are not policy authorities. And then there are partners who are policy authorities. All the regions are covered. We talked about the geographical coverage. But if you have non-policy authorities involved in your partnership, is it mandatory to involve also the policy authorities of those regions, or is it enough as such when it comes to the consortium composition? Nico, maybe a comment from you on this.
It is indeed a very specific question, but it's come back to this famous rule of 50% of the policy instruments needs to be represented by their policy responsible authority. I'm afraid I cannot answer these questions because we would need to understand what are the policy instruments addressed in this project. I can already say that it's very positive that 4 partners are full public authorities because thanks to this, maybe they will already reach the 50% because the 4 policy instruments related to this policy authorities will represent already 4 out of 7 regions, maybe. So it's okay. But you understand, we need again to have a clear vision on what are the policy instruments to be able to answer this. It's also an opportunity for me to say that if the Food Innovation Hub is coming alone to address a policy instrument without its public authority, first, still, this public authority will need to come as an associated policy authority, the golden stakeholder, as we say earlier. But more importantly, it does not prevent the hubs from demonstrating its policy relevance. We would still ask in the application form, okay, you are the food innovation hubs. What is your capacity to influence this policy instrument? What is your role in the policy making for this policy instrument? So you understand, we are quite demanding with this policy relevance. It's not because you reach the 50% that it's okay. For the remaining regions where the policy responsible authority is not involved, we would still ask what is the policy relevance of the partners coming from these regions.
Excellent. I think that clarifies the situation for Patricia, but also gives inspiration for others, perhaps thinking about how to put their partnership together. Staying on the topic of policy instruments and how to choose the right one to address, is it possible to select the policy instrument that would not be adopted before the application is submitted, something that will be in force only later on? Would this still be fine as an instrument, Nico?
It's a question that we had regularly in the first call, especially in relation to the Investment for Jobs and Growth program, and it's another quite important question. We have answered yes to this question as long as two conditions are met. First, you already know quite well the content of these policy instruments, because we need to ensure that it's relevant to the topic you want to address, you understand? So you need to have a draft of these policy instruments with the priorities that are defined to make sure it fits in the projects. That's the first condition. The second condition that we completely underestimate in the first call, you need also to know who is the policy responsible authority for this future policy instrument, because it becomes an eligibility rule. This policy responsible authority needs to be involved. I mention it because we face several issues in the first call with the leader programs. We realize that for the future programming period, for the 21-27, unfortunately, the policy responsible authority of the leader program were not selected yet. So it creates several issues in the eligibility. But conclusion to this question, yes, it's possible, as long as you have a fair idea of the content of the policy instrument and you know who will be the policy responsible authority for this policy.
Good. Next one, again, a very practical question, let's say. Is there a step-by-step guidance through the project submission process? Or let's turn it around a little bit. Can we maybe give a bit of an overview of how the process works? A lot of people are now working on their applications, putting together their partnerships. How does it continue from here? I don't know, Nico, perhaps I'll let you start with this and we'll complement with Anne afterwards.
Yeah, I can try to answer because it depends exactly what you mean by step-by-step guidance. I think the Interreg Europe website, when you go to look for funding, is a bit about these steps, you know. We mentioned first, check the relevance of your ID, get inspiration by looking at what exists. You can even share your project ID, and this will allow also you to find partners. And at a certain moment, what we advise you, it's perfect, it's already there, I'm impressed. At a certain moment, when you're made sure with your project ID, you know more or less what it is, you have a bit of the partners, you know more or less the policy instrument, you can ask feedback from the program to see if you go in the right direction. So that would be for me the main steps to prepare a good applications. What I would add is that you can start playing, in brackets, playing with the application form on the portal, because the portal will also accompany you with automatic checks. It will tell you if you don't cover the 4 areas. It will tell you if policy responsible authorities are not involved enough, etc. So there's as much as possible, we have developed these automatic checks on the portal when you prepare an application to accompany you in the drafting of your application form.
Indeed. So all of the information is available online. The application will also be submitted online. We have guidelines on our website that take you through the process, as Nico just explained. We also have some tutorials. We have the rest of the Q&A sessions to take you through any questions or concerns you might have. We have a week dedicated to project developments when we do a series of webinars to help you prepare every step of your application, and then the online application system, our portal, is built to guide you through the process as you fill it in. We also have a template available for the full application that can help you prepare, but the final application itself will be completed fully online. All right, let's continue a little bit with the questions on the list. The next one is very specific. There's somebody looking for partners on certain types of topics. And on this, I would rather encourage you to use the chat. There are still 75 people in the session. And if you are looking for a specific type of partners, perhaps post that call in the chat and interact with the other participants in the session. We will focus on questions. And the next one on the list is, can working to reach a target of the EU Biodiversity Strategy 2030, which has been assigned to the Common Agricultural Policy, be financed by Interreg? Nico, I think this is again for your quick comment.
Yes, it's a difficult question, because a few years ago in the past program, I would have told you, no, this is completely impossible. There was a clear separation between what ERDF and regional development was financing and the CAP. The game is much more open now, because the Commission is promoting also synergies between the funds more and more. So it may be possible. You need to make clear that because biodiversity is eligible in our program. And of course, a lot of regional development policies which are not CAP, which are not agricultural policy, promote this biodiversity. So I would say that if your project only address agricultural policy instruments, that may not be good, for sure. But if one of the instrument is leader and the other one, anyway, you would have to indicate an investment for growth and jobs programs. And some others are more local, traditional, local, regional development policy instruments. Yes, indirectly, you would also contribute to the EU biodiversity strategy. So indirectly, this should be possible.
Should be possible. Excellent. We have quite a few rather specific questions on the list. So let's take the ones that would be of general interest at first and cover the rest later. Let's go to Kevin's question about pilot actions, because there were questions about pilots. We talked about them briefly, but just to clarify for anyone else who might also be thinking about pilot actions. So is it to test ideas or different aspects of the project proposal, or can they only be used for demonstration? So just to come back to the objective and the purpose of the pilot actions, Nico, if you could clarify.
Yes, for sure. It's the first part. It has to be used to test something, but I'm not 100% sure to understand demonstration, because it can also be used to demonstrate if it works or not in the region. But the notion I mentioned earlier, what you have to understand with pilot action, it's in the word pilot. It's really about testing something new in the region to see if it works or not. And if it works, hopefully, the policy instrument will support it on a long run.
Good. And then, okay, let's take another question that is at the top of the list at the moment. Ukraine and eligibility for funding. Nico, I will let you continue.
Yes, so I want to say that third country partners' involvement is more than welcome. Unfortunately, at least for this second call for Ukraine, Ukraine is not eligible to ERDF. ERDF is only, the subvention we are managing with Interreg Europe is only for European Union. So the only possibility in the second call for Ukraine to participate is, unfortunately, to come at its own cost, even if it's symbolic. If you want to be a partner in a project, you need to have a financial involvement. Sometimes we had Albanian partners in the past, we had even Ukrainian partner in the past. Their financial contribution is quite symbolic. It's mainly their staff cost, in a way. What, sorry, Anne, maybe I overlap with your part, but what is important for these third country partners to understand is that their travel and accommodation costs can be paid by EU partners if they are budgeted by these EU partners. So this helps a bit these third country partners to be involved in the project because they can have this financial incentive if, of course, the EU partners agreed to pay their travel and accommodation costs. But this is also, of course, an opportunity for me to say that this year we are working on a new enlargement of the program. Nothing is done yet, but we are investigating whether we can extend the program to 5 new Balkan countries, which would be supported through IPA funding. and in addition to enlarge it also to Ukraine and Moldova, which would be supported with NDK funding. Nothing is settled yet. We are working hard on this, but if everything goes well and member states agree on this, we could imagine a third call next year where Ukrainian partners or Albanian partners or whoever could be involved and supported with funding in Interreg Europe.
Thank you for that update. Interesting news, I think, as such. And anything else you want to add about third country participation? And maybe a quick comment also on eligibility of other types of partners. We have a question about Vatican City, for example, but I will combine it with Anne, your comments about additional funding for partners from non-program countries.
Yeah, no, basically, as we said, and Nico reminded also, partners who are eligible to ERDF are the partners who are from the member states of EU, so 27 countries and Norway and Switzerland. So they're eligible to ERDF, to Norwegian funding or to Swiss funding. Then partners from other countries should come with their own funding. As far as I know, the state of Vatican City, I'm not sure that they are part of the EU, so they wouldn't be eligible to ERDF. So they can participate in the exchange of experience with their own funding, and that's what we can say for now. And yeah.
Yes, thank you. I will not go into the very country-specific questions just yet, seeing that we have about 10 minutes left. So let's try to focus on the ones that are of generic interest. On this, I'm going to take Helena's question, the third one on the list, because this one, even though it is a specific one, there is a challenge that I think a lot of applicants might be struggling with. They are thinking about a project that would be oriented to improving governance structures of regions in a topic related to sustainability, so something that overlaps with different topics. And they're wondering whether to choose a greener Europe or a better governance. So for somebody hesitating between different topics, what tips or advice can we give? Nico, perhaps you want to start.
Yes, it's a very interesting question. I would advise to go rather to greener Europe, to policy objective 2. Why? You have to always wonder what is the situation I want to improve. And at the end of the day, I think this governance structure you want to improve is to become more sustainable, to more environmental friendly, to go towards greener Europe. So even if it's on governance structure, the final aim is a topic related, it's thematic, related. That's the reason why I would rather propose for this project to go to greener Europe. For policy objective 6, it's really exchange of experience on a subject that could apply almost to any kind of topics. I was mentioning state aid, procurement, evaluation of policies. It can apply to any kind of things. This is more what we envisage behind policy objective 6. It may be also an opportunity for me to reassure everybody that because we have one single priority, as mentioned earlier, on capacity building, your final choice of specific objective is important, but it will not be an issue if you miss it. It won't be a big issue because we could simply, if you approve at the end, we could simply ask you to modify the selection of the policy objective. But at the end of the day, what should help you in the selection of the policy objective is the identification of the policies you want to improve.
Very good. All right, let's go back to the pilots for a little while. There are a few more pilot action related questions lined up a bit further on the list, but can a pilot be implemented only by one partner, or do all partners of the project need to participate in the pilot? Nico.
Yeah. So here we follow the definition of the Commission, which has introduced the notion of joint pilot action. And it means that it can be one partner mainly testing in each region as long as another partner participates in a way or another. I was giving the example earlier today of a coaching partner because he knows well this practice or this testing, the content of the testing. So this other partner will be involved in a way or another of the implementation. But the testing can happen only in one partner. Also, the idea of the pilot action is that the design, its implementation, and the lessons learned are shared with all the partners, because it may be also useful for the learning that the others have access to what happens and maybe enrich the exchange of experience. But there are projects where the testing happen in only one region. There's a way to demonstrate the joint character is, of course, when the same test happens in 2 different regions. This is also possible.
Yes, very good. All right. And another pilot question before moving on to other topics. What is the percentage of the approved proposals that include pilot actions? And if a pilot action is planned, does that usually improve the evaluation of the project? In other words, should the applicants try to include a pilot action or not? Or is it, how mandatory is it? Nico.
It's a very good question, because I asked this statistic to my colleague 6 months ago, but I completely forgot it now. So in the approved project, I can't remember. I'm sorry. I would say it's between 20 to 30% that had a pilot actions in their project maximum. And it does not play in the evaluation. I would say even it's the opposite, is that one of the main shortcomings we identified in the first call applications is that a lot of projects were coming with pilot actions that were not defined yet, that were not specific enough. And if the rest was good, the project was still recommended, but one of the conditions is that they remove the pilot actions. So there were more cases like that. There are cases where the pilot actions was clear from the very beginning. So my message on this question is, or the recommendation, if you prepare a pilot action, or if you be very careful, and you can include it in the application form only if it's very precisely defined during the preparation phase. Otherwise, come without the pilot action.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Looking at the time, we have 5 minutes left and 13 questions still on the list. I will say that we still cover a few more questions, which means that we will go a little bit over our initially foreseen timing. Anne, unfortunately, will have to leave us, and we don't have finance questions on the list as such. So at this point, Anne, I would like to thank you very much for addressing the questions of the participants today. And we will go through a few basic questions, and the ones that we do not manage to cover now in this session live, we will reply to them in writing in Slido later on. While we go through the rest of the questions, I would like to launch our concluding poll, because we would like to get some feedback from you on this session. We've spent an hour and a half together talking about your questions, trying to give you as many answers as possible. So let us know how it was. All right. I am very sorry for that. We are having some technical difficulties at the moment, but let's not worry about those. Let's keep going and cover a few remaining parts of today's session. We will take a couple more questions, but before we do so, we have a conclusion ending poll running. Give us some feedback. Let's continue with a few more slides. I will just tell you what else is coming, and then Nico and I will a few more questions, knowing that we have quite a few on the list. So in case your question was not answered today, don't worry. We have a recording of this session that will be available. We will reply to the question in Slido. You will see those in writing once you get the recording. We also have an FAQ on the website where you can find much more information about frequently asked questions and other tips and tricks for your project preparation. We also have an ask a question form that you can use to submit your question, send it to us, and we will get back to you via email. So these tools are available to you. As Nico mentioned, we also take you through the entire application process on our website. You can check your project's relevance, use our self-assessment tool fully online. You can click through it, see if you're on the right track. You can have a look at all of the past projects that we have funded. You can see a lot of project ideas and look for inspiration from those. You can also share your project idea and look for partners in our community. Already the fact that you registered for this session means that you are part of that community, so you have full access to all of our online tools. And if you have a project idea, you can also send it to us and get some feedback, tailored feedback on your idea. And then, as said, the full application is online. We also have some other events to help you prepare. So the application is online. You can access it in our portal. And we also invite you to join some of our upcoming sessions. We will continue with these Q&As in the weeks that are coming, but we also have a special week of project development webinars from the 24th until the 27th of April, starting at 10 each morning. We're going to take you through how to build your partnership, how to design your project methodology, how to prepare your budget and finances, and how to work on your communication strategy. So 4 sessions dedicated to different parts of project development, and you are most welcome to join those. In addition to the webinar series, we will continue with these Q&As more or less every Friday or Wednesday for every 2 weeks. The next session will be on the 5th of April and will continue until the beginning of June. So you can sign up for any of those sessions, come back with more questions. And I want to thank you very much for joining us today. Nico, if you are still available, we can take a couple more questions before we wrap up today's session. As said, I'm not going to go into the country-specific ones, but a little bit further down the list, we have, for example, a question from Patricia. She's asking about feedback and how to ask for it. As I said, the feedback itself is available through our website. Once you've published your project idea, you can pass it on to our colleagues through our feedback tool. You can get feedback once, so make sure that you're advanced enough and you can do it. But Nico, maybe you want to comment on the feedback a little bit more. What kind of inputs do we want before we give feedback on a project idea? How advanced or how detailed should the idea be?
It's a good question, Mia, because one of the things we face sometimes is that applicants, they submit it a bit too early and they are not able to fill in all the sections. They don't have ideas of the policy instruments. They don't know yet what kind of partners they're going to work with from which country. And of course, our feedback is much less interesting, much less rich, because we can only judge on the information we receive. So we would advise you to look at this form, what kind of questions are asked, and only when your idea is a bit more mature, then you could submit it. So it's useful. The feedback you're going to have from the program hopefully will be much more useful. And Mia, if you want me, I can screen very quickly through the question because it can be very quick to answer to most of them. Even the specific country one, I don't want to contradict you, Mia, but it's an interesting moment maybe to inform on something we haven't said anywhere. It's a stakeholder group that needs to be created in each of the region. When you are working on policy development, you're not alone as a public authority, so you need to create a kind of stakeholder groups that gather all the most important actors and stakeholders in your region. But what I don't understand in Puglia region is that the stakeholders come from the region that are impacted by the policy instrument. They never come from other regions. So I'm not sure what is meant there. And in addition, usually they are not partners, these stakeholders, but the partner are related to the policy instrument you address, to the territory that is defined by the policy instrument, if I can explain this. Canary Islands are fully eligible, no problem at all, part of the European Union. Support letter cannot be provided by stakeholder. It's impossible. The system will not even allow you to do that. And I would insist on what Anne say. We are not encouraging too much advisory partners, to be honest. If you come with an advisory partner, please explain why it is needed, it is justified. So in other words, a policy authority can come alone without any problem. But I think this question means that it can come with a more specialized partner, but then this is not an advisory partner. An advisory partner is not addressing any policy instrument and it helps the whole regions involved in the project. So maybe there's a bit of confusion. Everything is explained in the manual anyway.
And I would ask you to take the third one. So just to be sure, lead partner, does it have to be a policy responsible authority?
No, it doesn't have to be. We can even have advisory lead partner. So again, there's no obligation, no requirement in this regard.
And then again, third on the list, if somebody is looking to join a partnership but cannot really find information, where to find partners, whom to contact, how to get started. My tip here would be to make use of our community. There are over 7,000, actually 7,500 people there, and you can search based on country, type of organization, interest to join in a project, interest to lead a project, and as well go through all of the project ideas that we have on our website. But Nico, do you maybe have some other tips on how to find partners?
For me, that's the most useful would go on project IDs, because you would immediately join someone that is leading, that have already identified partners. So look for project IDs in your topic, and maybe you will be able to join an existing consortium that is under development. I think that's the best advice, Mia.
Right.
I can very briefly.
Then let's continue with the. So if somebody's involved in other projects, in other Interreg programs, let's say, is it worth mentioning it in the application?
Yes, as I said earlier, we are quite open with innovative character. We just simply do not want to finance continuation of existing projects. So you may mention that you're coming from Adriatic, because it's always useful for us to know. But it should not play too much against demonstrating the innovative character, because we will ask you to expand much more and to have very different partners than you had in Adriatic. But you can mention it. I think it's interesting. And I want to answer
4
also,
more. Let's be quick with these.
Yeah. Access to education. This is a very, very broad question. And again, the possibility of policy improvement are infinite. It's amazing. So if you are working in education, lifelong learning, maybe you will develop a new models of training, because you will learn from another region that a training on this specific subject, IT, I don't know, would be very useful in your curricula. So you will develop a new project in a way. Or you may find from other regions that you should communicate better your training scheme to the beneficiaries, or you may change the rules, the criteria to involve new beneficiaries in your training models. You see, the way you can do policy improvements is very, very open, and there's plenty of possibilities there. I would also advise you to check the policy improvements. We publish them on our website.
All right. A few more questions. One specifically about Strand D of Interreg, and this comes back to some of the stuff that we discussed earlier on today about Interreg Europe being a rather specific program among the Interregs, but perhaps you want to comment on Strand D and outermost regions and where to maybe go for information.
Yes, I cannot really say much because we are not Strandy, we are Strand C, so we are not the one advising on this. I have just published now in the chat the website of the Commission on this Strand D. They will develop several programs depending on the area. So you will see them, Indian Ocean, Caribbean, Amazonia, Mozambique, Madeira. And I don't know where they are with the building of this program. I don't know if they are already ready, if they have already launched calls, but you will need to address these different programs, I'm afraid, and go directly to the Strand D.
All right, and then just a couple of final questions. How to, when it comes to the level of development of regions, how to group them? Is it based on GDP, or how to make sure that you have different types of regions in your partnership?
Exactly. We refer to GDP per capita, so very straightforward, not very innovative, unfortunately, but that's what we mean, and it's explained also in the manual that it's the criteria to have the mix between different level of regions. And by the way, you may have, for instance, if you take Slovakia, a national policy instrument, although the ministry is based in Bratislava, in the capital, which is high on the GDP, since the national instrument covers the whole of Slovakia, this would still be considered as perhaps less advanced region. So it's also quite open, this approach.
Exactly. The last one is a rather specific one. What are the prospects for beneficiaries who intend to include hard project elements in the proposal, such as reconstruction of water management related structures or facilities to mitigate the effects of extreme weathers or climate change? So just to come back, maybe this is a good concluding question as well. The objective of Interreg Europe projects and what kind of activities should be the core focus of the project?
Yes, I'm afraid the prospects are not very joyful. They have to be quite limited, I'm afraid, because this kind of we don't really have hard investment in our projects. The things we did the most was refurbishment of partly refurbishment of a building for a center, a one-stop shop. But really, the investments are very, very limited. And one of the things we usually say, if your main motivation to come to Interreg Europe is a pilot action, usually it's not a very good sign. The main motivation should be to exchange experience, find inspiration from other regions in order to improve your challenge. The pilot section is on top of this. It may bring added value to this, but we don't think it should be really the starting point.
Excellent. I'm going to take the last question, and that's also a way for us to close this session. Before I do so, I just want to remind you that the concluding feedback poll is still running. If you didn't give us feedback yet on this session, please do so. Click on the poll before leaving this session. We have a last question about how to register for the 3 days of seminars that we just mentioned, actually 4 days of seminars. I just put a link in the chat to our apply for the call page, and my colleague just posted direct links to all of these sessions. You can find all the links to register for the webinars, for the Q&As, for related session in the chat and on our website. A central hub information related to the call is our apply for the call page. You have all of the different activities, the different tools, the different support systems on that page, and direct links to the specifications in the chat. So please do sign up for the upcoming sessions. We hope to see you there, and we hope you are well on track to develop your projects, and we hope to receive your by the time we close the call on the 9th of June. For now, the only thing left from us to say is thank you very much for joining. Thank you very much for staying with us until the end of the session. Feedback poll still open. Recording will be coming soon. Slido continues to be available. New Q&As coming up soon as well. So let's stay in touch while you continue to develop your project proposals, and very good luck for the project preparation. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.